You're listening to the Connection Care Community Podcast, a podcast designed to help you understand your body more deeply and feel more confident navigating your hormones, cycle, and fertility. Each episode offers grounded, research-informed guidance and integrative tools to support hormone health, embodied awareness, and informed choice. If you're seeking clarity, connection, and a more trusting relationship with your body, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Here's your host, the founder of Connection Care Therapy, Majida.
Hello and welcome to the Connection Care Community Podcast. My name is Majida, and today we're talking about whether cycle syncing still works when your hormones feel or are actually less predictable. For many people, the idea of syncing their cycle with their life can feel a little bit more than out of reach when your cycle is not following a clear pattern. Maybe your cycle is long, or maybe it's short, or maybe ovulation is happening inconsistently, or maybe you have symptoms that are changing from month to month to month. And there can be a quiet question underneath all of this. Can cycle syncing still actually work for me? Is this something that, considering what my body is going through, is this a skill that I can actually apply? So what I want to offer at the very beginning of this conversation is that cycle syncing was never meant to be reserved for perfect cycles, or quote unquote perfect cycles, because truly there is no such thing as a perfect cycle. Cycle syncing as a practice is not built on the assumptions that your hormones are going to be doing the same thing every month. It's built on something that is far more flexible. It's built on observation, on understanding, and on being responsive to what your body is actually telling you in real time. Not rigid timing, not strict rules, but learning how your body is communicating and working with that instead of trying to force it into some kind of structure that doesn't fit. So even when cycles are irregular or what I like to call medically complex, or just not following a predictable rhythm of some form, the framework of cycle syncing, and while I actually advocate for it to be the foundation, cycle mapping, those frameworks still apply. And in many ways, they become even more useful because instead of relying on a calendar, you're learning how to read your body in real time. When our hormones are a bit imbalanced, the starting point can sometimes shift. Yes, that is absolutely the case. We're no longer having some idea as to syncing to what an ideal cycle should, and I'm using quotes here, right, should look like. We're syncing to what's actually happening in the here and now. And what might that look like? It might look like paying attention to signs of your energy rising, even if ovulation isn't clearly confirmed. Or it might be noticing when your body is asking for more rest, regardless of what cycle day you're on. Or even more so, when I'm working with clients who are navigating irregular cycles and working on understanding how a practice like cycle syncing works for them, we simplify it down even more. Right? Am I bleeding? Right? Or not? Or do I feel more outward or inward? Those patterns, when you start to actually map what's going on with your cycle, those patterns you'll notice actually still exist, even if they're not being perfectly, and I'm again using quotes around this word perfect, even if there's not some kind of idea of them being perfectly timed. So I want to use this podcast time to actually walk us through a few different scenarios, just so that we can see what this actually looks like in real life. I'm going to keep this much more conversational and less technical here on the podcast. If you want the deeper breakdown, if you like to read things, you just absorb information better if you can actually see certain things visually, I do invite you to head on over to my Substack, where in the full Substack, I go into much more detail about all of this. But again, just keeping it kind of conversational for right now. Starting out with what was previously known as PCOS, but is now called PMOS. With those who are navigating PMOS, their cycles can oftentimes be longer. If you're out there and you're navigating PCOS/PMOS, that's probably something that you've experienced. Cycle irregularity, sometimes there's ovulation, sometimes there's not. And this can make traditional cycle syncing feel very confusing because it's like, what exactly am I syncing to right now, right? That's the question. So this is where we can shift the question. Instead of asking, what phase should I be in? We have the opportunity to ask, what is my body showing me right now? And oftentimes the anchor becomes consistency in things like blood sugar support, nourishment, stress regulation, because those are some of the biggest factors that are actually influencing the hormonal signaling when it comes to navigating a diagnosis like PMOS. From there, we can start to layer awareness around energy patterns, cravings, subtle shifts in mood or focus. All of these are pieces of data. All of these are important pieces of information about what your body is striving to communicate with you. I know it's like we are not at all, there's no framework within the larger zeitgeist for slowing down and turning our attention inward in this kind of way. And oftentimes when we are something like turning attention inward and slowing down is treated with a level of taboo and disregard, even though that's a central part of our experience as those who menstruate, we can find that we start to self-abandon in certain types of ways. And so what I'm offering here is that cycle syncing, cycle mapping, these practices can be ways for us to slow things down, to turn our lens inward, to engage with our experiences as a report card of sort. And instead of trying to fix something or control something, we can start actually looking at what our body is working to communicate with us and start trying to treat ourselves and our communication as truly as valuable as we authentically are. So moving on from PMOS to endometriosis. And definitely here the approach can feel a bit different. Cycle syncing here has it has a tendency to be less about optimizing any kind of productivity or anything along those lines, and be more so about supporting the body through known patterns. So if certain phases tend to come with pain or inflammation, then there is the opportunity to plan support around that. Not in a way of being restrictive, right? Or not through the lens of restriction, but through the lens of support. This can look like adjusting workload where and whenever it's possible, building more time to rest ahead of schedule, or making sure that nourishment is in place before symptoms become at their peak. And sometimes that's really what's important here, right? That is the most important thing here. Sometimes syncing our cycle is not about trying to push ourselves towards some kind of plan, no matter how we feel. In fact, what I'm offering is that it can be about the opposite of that, right? It's about creating more ease in the cycle, releasing pressure, releasing performance, and again, back to that conversation about slowing down and noticing. So one of the things before I go on and talk about thyroid conditions and what this can look like when it comes to those of us who are navigating thyroid concerns, it really is an opportunity for self-reflection and self-reflection about the messages that you may have received about what is valuable and what parts of you are valuable versus what parts of you are not valuable, or what parts of you should just be put your head down and push on through. What are practices like cycle syncing and cycle mapping, which cycle mapping is actually it's a term that I used to describe the FAM fertility awareness base methods, practices, and what have you, where you're charting certain things about your body, like your basal body temperature, like your cervical fluid. You're actually engaging with these pieces of biological information as reports as to what your body is communicating to you every month. For those of us who cycle, practices like cycle syncing and cycle mapping can really provide us an opportunity to say, what are the messages that I have been told about what is important and what is not important? And why? Like, maybe the question may come up, why are so many of the messages that I've been told about what is important have very little to do with authentically what my body navigates as part of its natural ebb and flow, right? Its natural cycle every month. This gets into so much more of a nuanced conversation, which I do cover on other podcasts and other blogs and Substacks, when it comes to our relationship to our nervous system and how certain kinds of constructs, whether that's societal constructs, familial constructs, relational constructs, how do we know what we know about our body? What have we been taught is important versus not important? And how can we really shift messaging around so that we start to engage with a sense of authenticity and integrity and alignment with who we are and our flow and our rhythm as people who menstruate, people who have cycles, people whose body doesn't perform according to some kind of machine-like linearity. Okay, so I'm going to hop off my soapbox. I can go on about that for a while, as you could probably imagine, but let's go ahead and talk about thyroid conditions and this conversation about energy, right? The thyroid gland and this amazing butterfly gland at our throat that does so much in our body, so much for our system. However, many of us, right, have thyroid concerns, and if we're talking about energetic root causes, right, even maybe use the word spiritual root causes of some thyroid concerns, oftentimes we see things like suppression of voice and suppression of authentically speaking truth to one's power and one's purpose and one's desire and one's hope and dreams and boundaries. Right? There, when we're looking at thyroid concerns, is where we can oftentimes see a pretty significant gap between what you want to do, right? Maybe on some kind of want to do level, like pressure to do, feel obligated to do, right? So maybe not even authentically desire to do, but feel pressure and obligation to do, and what our bodies can actually sustain. Okay, so the gap between that pressure of what we feel obligated to do and what our body is actually saying authentically yes to or no to. So cycle syncing here becomes less about phases and more about rhythm. We're talking daily rhythm, sleep and sleep hygiene, meals and deep nourishment, pacing energy in a way that does not lead to burnout. Because when energy availability is limited, consistency becomes far more supportive than anything in regards to intensity. When we're talking about thyroid concerns, I also, like, if you remember what I was talking about earlier, a lot of that has to do with relationality too, right? A lot of it has to do with how we're navigating relationality and this impact on our capacity, right? Actually, are we in relationality, intimate relationships, familial dynamics, workflow dynamics, friend dynamics that are actually honoring our capacity and how we need to be held. Really recognizing these things and getting back to honoring and reflecting on these things, this alone, I have seen that acknowledgement alone really shift how cycles are experienced over time. So then there's when cycles are not just irregular, but even missing, right? I want to say something really clearly. Cycle syncing doesn't disappear in these moments, right? This is not a time when, if you're mapping your cycle and you're working to sync your cycle and then your cycles aren't showing up for one reason or another. This isn't a time when these practices become meaningless. Actually, what I offer is that it's an opportunity to sink into broader patterns. Times when energy are high versus low, weeks when your body feels more open versus more inward. Some people even find it helpful to anchor in things like seasonal rhythms, for example, the menstrual winter, right? Or simply offer themselves consistent check-ins. If that even feels like a lot, right? Keep it even simpler. This is an offering to simplify as much as possible, tracking one thing at a time, just energy, just mood, just sleep, just one daily signal, because awareness is the foundation here. Again, regularity is not in your cycle is not what we're reflecting on. There might be deeper, right, more nuanced aspects of your experience to attune to. Something that I just want to super briefly touch on before we close out this podcast is to talk about supplements, because they often come up in certain conversations. And I want to offer that if you're navigating a cycle irregularity, the supplements can definitely be supportive in a space like this. However, they do work best, in my strong, well-established experience at this point in time, right? That they work best when there is a consideration of the wholeness of the person, meaning really having conversations about things like nervous system support and awareness. Supplements can never be a replacement for certain things. So yes, the timing, the quality, and the context of all of that matters. If there's something that you're looking for me to go deeper on, please do reference the full article, as well as I have a full supplement dispensary with curated packages that for all kinds of different folks who are navigating all kinds of different hormone health concerns and fertility concerns. So you can head on over to my website if you have more questions. I take time to really ensure that I'm writing up good summaries and explanations of things. So you can head on over to connectioncaretherapy.com, and you can either scroll down in the shop. Scroll down and you'll see the supplement dispensary there, or you can just type in supplement dispensary into search and you'll come up with it there. So much more information provided there, because this is a nuanced part of the conversation when we're talking about hormone imbalances or irregular cycles. So again, just to summarize, if you're listening and you have at any point thought my cycles do not fit neatly into any of these categories, even the ones that Majida was just mentioning on this podcast, I want you to know that that's okay, that it doesn't have to, that the goal isn't to fit your body into some kind of framework. It's to allow a framework to support your understanding of your body. Okay, and I'll say that again. The goal is not, if you take away anything from this, our time together today, we're not working to fit you into some kind of box, into some kind of framework. Like, keeping it real, you are vast enough and profound enough and nuanced enough that there is never going to be a one size fit all for who you are and for your body and all of the complexity and nuance and beauty that your body encompasses. So the goal is not to fit your body into a framework, is to allow the framework to have a space within the framework to ensure that you're supporting the understanding of your body. So again, if you want to go deeper into this, I do have the full Substack article to walk you through the scenarios that we talked about today in more detail, along with practical ways to start applying it to your daily life. And this is part of a larger series that I have on my Substack and podcasts around cycle syncing overall. So if you're enjoying this conversation, or there's pieces that you want to dive into deeper, things like cravings, things like mental health and hormones, things like fertility, please, I invite you on over, become a subscriber to my podcast. Please leave a like if you're listening to this on YouTube or on another channel where you're able to. It really does support my work. If you're looking for more structure guidance, check out my course that will be launching, The Cycle Connection, which you can go ahead and get on my mailing list, and you'll receive updates to that, along with a whole bunch of other free resources that will be sent your way. So yeah, we'll close out there. I think, that's all for now. Just in conclusion, right, cycle syncing is not reserved for this concept, an erroneous concept of like some perfectly balanced body. That's not what it is. It's a tool for understanding real bodies, especially when things feel a little messy or inconsistent or harder to read. All right. So thank you again for joining me today. I really do enjoy this time that we spent together, and I do look forward to continuing these conversations in the next podcast. And until then, be sure to stay connected.
That does it for this episode of the Connection Care Community Podcast with Majida. Thank you so much for listening. We hope you're leaving with a fresh perspective on your body and overall well-being, along with practical tools you can integrate into daily life. The support doesn't stop here. Be sure to connect with us online at connectioncaretherapy.com for more resources to guide you on your journey. You can also find us on Substack and connect with Majida on Instagram at Majida Sai'da. Remember to rate, review, and share this podcast. And most importantly, stay connected.